It sure is busy this evening.
Looks like most of the fleet is in, said Rose, as Dimpner parked their car. Rose was well known to the local fishermen as she had been a fixture around the docks since the age of 2. Oh Rosie, I know I always say it when we walk on the docks, but that fishy smell brings me right back to my cannery days. When I first arrived here after I had left the reservation, the bus I was on let me off just up there. I had got talking to a nice old man on the bus, and he said that if I was looking for work, I should head straight for the canneries. Back then the docks were a hive of activity, 7 days a week, with the fleet about 3 times the size of what it is now. There were 3 canneries in those days and I headed for the nearest one I could find. I remember it as if it was yesterday. Now, you got to remember that at that time, I was a 17-year-old Lakota girl who had never been off the reservation. I headed into the office of the cannery factory and went to the front desk. "I'm looking for work," I said, "but I am not from this area and have no experience in this type of work." The woman behind the desk just looked at me, and I've never forgotten her words to this day. "Missy, if the smell of fish doesn't turn you ill and you can work long and unsociable hours, then I got the job just for you. If not, then that's tough luck as this is a fishing town and there isn't much else for a young girl like you," she said. Well, my eyes just lit up as I was so excited about working and earning some money to send to my family. Yes, it used to take some amount of scrubbing and long showers to get that fishy smell off, but we had some great fun working in the cannery. There were some real characters there. "There's my girls, there's my angels," said an excited Sam, from his wheelhouse window, as he maneuvered the Lakota Girl 3 alongside the dock. "How's she looking aft, Scotty?" he shouted. "She's good here, Cap. Will I tie her off?" "Right she be. Tighten up them stern ropes then Scotty, we'll be good after that." "Hi Pappy, hi Cap, how did ye do this week in the end? Got much aboard her?" Rose asked. Rosie, it was a rough 6 days with the weather and all, but we got a decent catch in the end. The last 2 days really made our trip. Just hope we get a good price for them but we'll all have a paycheck and are home safe and sound, and that's the main thing. And I'm with my 2 girls now, so it doesn't get any better than this. They're giving it force 9 to possibly force 10, southwesterly, so all the fleet has come in out of it, he said. Listening to Rose and Sam talk about fishing always brought a smile to Dimpner's face, as it was like listening to any 2 fishermen talk up and down the docks. Rose had always loved listening to her grandfather's fishing stories and would always help him with odd jobs when the boat was in harbor. It got to a stage where Dimpner was so sick with worry due to Rose's seemingly never-ending desire to be a fisherman when she left school, showing no signs of relenting. Of course, for Sam, although outwardly supporting Dimpner's stance, he secretly loved the idea, as his family's fishing legacy would continue and he thought that Rose would make a great fisherman one day. Her pleas to go to sea fell on deaf ears however, as Dimpner strictly forbade it. Going whale watching in the harbor was one thing but going out into the ocean was another. The Oregon autumn and winter fisheries were not for the faint-hearted, and Dimpner had lost count of all the sleepless nights she had endured down the years worrying for Sam and his crew as they battled through the weather. Where once the sight of the Lakota Girl 3 would fill Dimpner with great pride whilst recollecting her humble beginnings on the reservation, it now brought altogether different feelings. No matter how much she tried not to think about that night, the sight of the Lakota Girl 3 stirred those memories inside her, and lately, were beginning to worry her more and more. "Come on Uncy, let's go on board. I'll stay on the dock this time, you go ahead but be careful." "Okay Uncy, well Pappy will be up to join you shortly," said Rose, as she made her way on board. "Hey Rosie," the crew shouted out. "Our 6th crew member is here. Go and get your oilskins on, we got them good this trip," Scotty said. "Come on Scotty, as if you have to ask," Rose said, smiling. She made her way into the deckhouse to where her oilskins were hanging up. Each of the 5 crew members had their own individual hook to hang their oilskins on, and a 6th was set aside for Rose. In black marker pen, the names of each were written above the hooks. Cap, Scotty, Jay, Dusty, Lenny, and Rosie. Rose made her way out on the deck and got straight into it. Rose was in charge of shoveling the fish onto the conveyor that led onto the dock.
Sam and Scotty made their way onto the dock to take the weight tallies with the fish buyer.
Dimps, what are you doing all the way over there?
Come over here and give your old sea dog a kiss, said Sam.
You see there, Scotty,
40 years happily married.
Well, for me anyway.
She's as beautiful now as the first day I laid eyes on her. You're probably too young to remember, but we used to land our fish to a cannery that closed years ago, up where the supermarket is now. Well, one Friday, we had just finished landing and I took a shortcut through the cannery factory floor to get to the office. As I was walking through, there she was, as if an angel had just appeared before me, with those big brown eyes.
I was instantly smitten, but me been somewhat shy back then.
It took me some time to pluck up the courage to ask her out, but we have never looked back since.
Dimps,
I hope I'm not embarrassing you too much in front of Scotty. 6 days away from home turns me all mushy. Are you okay?
He said, as he hugged her.
I'm fine,
honey, Dimpna said.
Okay, if you say so, but I know you too well to believe that. I've got to go over here and talk with the buyers for a little bit. Scotty, Dimps needs cheering up. Tell her some of those jokes you were telling us at sea. Well, the clean ones anyway, he said, as he walked down the dock.
You know Dimpna, for a man of 60, he has got some energy. He's the oldest captain in the fleet now.
I guess he just loves being out there,
Scotty said. And when I first met him, he was the youngest captain.
Sam and your father, for 40 years, they fished together.
From young boys on Sam's father's boat, all the way up to the Lakota Girl 3.
Your father did the right thing, in retiring after that night. I wish Sam would do the same, as I worry for you all when you are out there,
Dimpna said.
They were all so lucky to survive that night.
You know, my father calls it retirement, but he would admit it himself, that it was a forced retirement, as he and the other guys were just too frightened to return to sea after going through that.
I've heard it enough times over the last 10 years from all the guys, and not just my father, and they all tell the same story.
It's really frightening what they describe.
It really is. Most of the locals put their accounts of that night down to trauma, but I believe something happened that night, I really do. I'm sorry, talking about that night, given what happened to Winona and Mikey,
said Scotty.
No,
we are just blessed that we didn't lose Sam, your father,
and the other guys, that night also,
said Dimpna.
He is slowly returning to something like the old Sam. When I had first told my father that I was helping Sam put a crew together for the Lakota Girl 3 to go back fishing, he told me without hesitation to do it, as he said you couldn't find a better captain to work for. Of course, I had done the odd trip on the boat before, with Sam, my father, and the old crew, but Sam definitely did change from what I had remembered him as. I mean, going through everything like that would change us all, right?
For the first few years after that night,
he was a shell of the man that I had remembered, just really quiet and withdrawn. There was no joy in him anymore, and I remember out of all the boats in the fleet, for those first few years, we had spent the most time at sea.
It was his way of dealing with things, I know that, he said.
You know that the insurance company was offering to pay out on the boat due to the damage sustained, but Sam elected to fix her. He would have retired, I'm sure, if Winona and Mikey hadn't passed away that night. Having to wait for him to wake in the hospital and tell him that Winona and Mikey were gone, it was the hardest thing I have ever done.
And then seeing the photos in the newspaper of the boat washed up on the beach, and with the whale lying beside it.
Absolutely devastating for him, but I'm so proud of him for how he has managed to cope, she said. Over the last few years he has begun to open up a lot more about that night. When we are at sea he talks about it sometimes, just between the two of us. He has known me all my life and we are close, so I guess he feels comfortable to talk about it with me. He firmly believes that he was saved by that whale, and he has talked about the lights under the water and the women on the waves. My father remembers being carried ashore by female voices also, said Scotty.
Sam had a great bond with that whale, and your father will attest to that.
It seems there are things in this world that are beyond our understanding sometimes. I thank Ruby, I always thank her in my prayers, as I believe she sacrificed her own life to save Sam's and to preserve what was left of our family. I am just grateful that Rose still has her grandfather.
They are like two peas in a pod, especially when it comes to fishing, she said,
smiling.
Look at her. She's a great kid.
Winona and Mikey would be so proud of her, said Scotty, as they watched Rose working. That's the last of them now, Scotty, shouted Lenny, from the deck of the boat. Okay Lenny, I'll come down and join you now. Let's wash the deck down and get everything squared away before we go home, said Scotty. 10 more minutes, Rosie. Don't forget, we have to go to the supermarket as I want to have supper ready before your pappy gets home. Okay Unsee, 10 minutes it is. In the meantime, Sam had made his way back to the dockside. You're not yourself today, Dimps. What's the matter with you? I'm scared, Sam. Rosie's dreams have returned and she's becoming more and more affected by them. Do you think the time has come? Saxon said that we would know when the time had come. They would tell us. Look at her, Dimps. That's our little girl. Not yet 12 years old. Hasn't she been through enough in her short life, without this hanging over her head? I wish that we would be told that it had all been a mistake, that Rosie could be just like any other kid and only have to worry about those things kids her age worry about, said Sam. She is asking more now about that night and what happened. How can we tell her now? It would be too much for her. She senses things more and more. She knows when we are hiding things from her, but she knows inside that we are somehow doing it for her own good. We will have to tell her one day, just not yet, but that time, I feel, is close, said Dimpner.